Joe Biden finds a way to forgive a large swath of student loan debts in the dead of the night when there's nobody around to come back and challenge it. So we will talk about what happened here, what this means for the economy, what we do with this going forward, and where this goes. In other news, UPS edges closer and closer to a strike, which would both snarl up supply chains again and put a large swath of the economy back up on edge. So we'll be talking about what's happening there, how UPS is attempting to circumvent it, and where we go from there. The presidential forum in Iowa is happening right now as we speak, and we've got some highlights from it. We're not doing the full thing, obviously, because it's been going since 10 o'clock this morning, but I have some highlights from Mike Pence, Tim Scott, and Asa Hutchinson, so we'll be talking about what's happening there and what we go and do with that. And Joe Biden authorized sending an additional 3,000 reserves to Europe, but also gets caught sniffing a terrified child. It is going to be all of this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got a ton of stuff to go over here today, especially compared to yesterday. But I just noticed here, I brought the live chat up and found out that I am not signed into the program here, so bear with me while I type in what I've got going on here. I know that you guys can't see the keyboard, so because I want to be able to see what it is you guys are saying. Definitely. Don't do a captcha, don't do a captcha. Oh, thank God, don't do a captcha. And they didn't. All right, we've got a ton of stuff to go over here today. Apologize for not being signed in there. And if you guys said anything over the cold open, I guess I have not seen it yet. Although I could probably go over, into YouTube and see what we've got over here. Mogwai says there's no Marjorie, only impeachment. Nice. I'm guessing you've seen my t-shirt here. Gozer's House of Puffed. It was something that we got from Once Upon a Tea, which is one of my favorite t-shirt companies. They put out a series of t-shirt designs that they only put them up for a week and then they're never available again. So I snagged this one, and you're probably never going to be able to get this one again. And I bought one for my nephew too, by the way, and he loves it. He wears it when he sees me, and I think that's pretty cool. Mogwai says UPS is soon going to have more scabs than Lindsey Graham's knees. Thank you for that mental image, Mogwai. All right, we've got some stuff to go over here today, especially, like I said at the top of the show, as compared to what we had yesterday, where there was almost nothing going on between the Republican forum, between some of the new stuff that Biden has tried to do, UPS getting ready to go on strike, Texas doing something completely, absolutely based, which you should be surprised about this. Even the Washington Post kind of stepping in it and having to stand back and say, hey, whoops, we screwed up. So we're going to get to all of it here today over on Contemporary. So we're going to get into it. Let's get started. Let's get the actual live chat up here. Reminder, you can chat in all live chats throughout the program. We are on Rumble, Twitch, DLive, YouTube, obviously, and Facebook. You can go check us out on all those platforms. We are on Kick. I don't check that one as much because it is fairly quiet, and it shows the video with full volume every time you go over and check onto it. So the thing with Kick is I will see you in the main chat, but you're not going to see anybody else's chats. I've actually got to get in and get that fixed, because I know once we start getting the restream chat coming through here, we're going to actually start getting hopefully promoted up at the top of the stream over there. But that is what we have going on for that. And before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, the No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, and Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine. Go check out all that great programming as we bring you a better experience from the common man, for the common man, that is right. It's time to stop getting your news and headlines and culture from people who hate you and wear suits that cost more than your house. It is time for you to get your news, culture, and headlines from people who are just like you. So go check out all that great programming. Other thing that I've been saying over the last week is I do want to see what you guys are having for dinner. Or in Boombox's case, breakfast. I want to see what you guys are having for dinner today, so feel free to get that into the live chat in all the chats. And let's get down into the news of the day. Let's get started. We're going to start with our finance segment on the day. All the live chat up here. All the chat. Live chat is banned. No more attacking democracy. Live chat is never banned over here. Although I do ask that we limit some of the things that we have to say about certain nations in the Levant. It's fun every once in a while. But let's get into it. Let's get started. That's more of a courtesy thing. I'm not going to ban people for that. Alright, let's do this. Starting with the Dow. The Dow is at 34,509.03. Another update. The Dow actually was up every day this week. Surprisingly. Not huge numbers. I mean, it's just hitting the upper edge of where it has been on the peak for quite a while at this point. It's not quite up to its 52-week high just yet. And that's after, of course, it fell off the pedestal of getting to nearly 37,000 at the very beginning of Biden's term before falling back off and into the 28,000 range. But it is up today at 113.89 points, or about a 34% on the day-to-day. Your Bitcoin is sitting at $30,262 US and 10 US cents. That is down after a significant drop earlier on in the day-to-day, $1,209 US and 70 US cents. That is down 3.84% on the day, so it looks like it stayed steady from about 6 o'clock Central Time yesterday until probably, they say, I would say this is probably about noon today, where it just completely dumped off. The times are not in local time, by the way, on this, just so you know. I figured that out quite a while ago while we were looking at this. But the Bitcoin is considerably down, so if you are interested in getting some of this, it is on sale right now. Not a huge sale like we saw when it was down to the 15,000 mark, but it's definitely on sale right now, so that is what we see for that. In the Madison area, the gas prices are fluctuating slightly with a little bit of a drop on the west side in one station. Our outliers are still staying at $3.60, but some of the stations are starting to show $3.30, where we were seeing $3.40 pretty steadily across the board in the Madison area. So you may see one or two of the stations in your local area drop ever so slightly. Remember, these prices are not your local prices. These are local prices to a similar market that we've been consistently watching since gas hit its bottom back in the middle of 2020, and watching to see what the patterns do and how they go. So check your local listings, see what your local gas prices are, but it looks like you may see a teeny tiny bit of reprieve over what it was earlier on in the week. So that is what we see for that. I did see $2.99, by the way, when I was in Clarksville in Tennessee. I actually stopped there, and I still had half a tank when I was coming back from Georgia. I had a half a tank, and I said, you know what? This is the last time in a while I'm going to see sub $3 gas, so I'm going to stop in and I'm going to top off right here. So that is what we have for that. And let's look at our market report today. Dow closes at 100 points higher Friday on solid earnings. Registers best week since March. From Ha-Kyun Kim and Tanaya Makil. I almost did the Biden thing there. And I've done that cringily before. Do the Biden thing where I say, read the line, repeat the line, Live updates! I caught myself. The Dow climbed Friday as strong earnings results from some of the biggest banks and companies kicked off earnings season. The 30-stock Dow added 113.89 points, or 0.33%, to close at 34,509.03 and marks its fifth consecutive day of gains. Meanwhile, the S&P dropped 0.1% to close at 45,0542. The Nasdaq fell 0.18, ending at 14,113.70. Both the S&P and the Nasdaq touched their highest intraday levels since April 2022. On a weekly basis, Dow notched its best performance since March, up 2.3%. The S&P added 2.4%, and the Nasdaq gained 3.3%. United Health shares lifted the blue chip index on Friday as its top performer. The insurance giant jumped more than 7% after it reported better than expected adjusted earnings and revenue. The company also raised the lower end of its full-year adjusted earnings guidance. United Healthcare was also the biggest gainer in the S&P 500's healthcare sector, which advanced 1.5%. JP Morgan rose 0.6% after its second quarter earnings topped expectations. The bank was boosted by higher interest rates and rising interest income, because when you charge more people more money to borrow, you're going to take more off the top. Wells Fargo inched down 0.3%, even though the bank posted better than expected results. What we've been seeing out of big banks' earnings, especially JP Morgan, is pretty resilient, said Scott Ladner, Chief Investment Officer at Horizon Investments. We're seeing right now that default rates are still historically incredibly low and not showing signs of skyrocketing higher. So that's a good sign for consumers and this economy, Ladner said. Also, keep in mind, it wasn't SVB, it was the other one that was teetering on the edge, and I can't think of the name of it right now. But they bought up one of the banks before the government snatched it all up and seized it up. So they're probably getting a little return off of buying that bank at the very, very bottom, because it was JP Morgan that picked that one up. So that is what we see on our finance report today. We've got a double dose of layoffs on the day. Binance cuts 1,000 employees, according to Forbes. From Brian Bouchard. Crypto exchange Binance has cut its workforce by 1,000 positions, the Wall Street Journal reported on Friday, making the crypto giant the latest major U.S. company to conduct layoffs this year as recession fears linger. Binance cuts more than 1,000 employees in recent weeks. A person familiar with the matter told the Journal, which PitchBook estimates represents an eighth of its total workforce. A Binance spokesperson told Forbes it's become clear to the company that it needs to focus on talent density across the organization to ensure we remain nimble and dynamic as it prepares for the next major bull cycle. Microsoft's layoffs affect 276 employees in the Seattle area. Warren Notice plans to cut another 158 employees, separate from the 10,000 it cut earlier in the year. Wells Fargo announced plans to cut over 100 employees in a Florida Warren Notice. Walgreens will cut up to 400 employees. And Niantic, the maker of Pokemon Go, will cut 230 of the California-based company's employees. So that's just another big round of stuff that's been going on while we've been looking at analytics of the layoffs rather than just the layoffs. So, but don't worry, everything is fine. We're all fine. Greatest economy in history. Just ask the paid shills. And one more, coming from the Blaze, Fox News quietly begins company-wide layoffs, including remaining former employees of Tucker Carlson, from Carlos Garcia. Fox News is reportedly beginning company-wide layoffs, including of the remaining former employees of Tucker Carlson. The development was reported by journalist and Carlson biographer Chadwick Moore on Friday, who published a screenshot of an email informing employees of the impending action. The email ordered the recipients to turn in all company equipment and their ID badges at 9 p.m. after the conclusion of the show that they were working on. Security will assist you in exiting the lobby turnstile since they will have returned your ID badge, the email read. One unnamed producer reportedly responded by calling the email degrading. Well, you work at Fox News, so you should know all about being degrading. Moore also reported that Fox News had quietly begun other company-wide layoffs at the company. Morale miserable across the teams on both news and opinion, said an unnamed producer, according to Moore. An unnamed source. Where's Mogwai's cat? producer added the shows on the network were receiving frantic bipolar guidance. Almost daily on blacklisted and unblacklisted guests, including sitting members of the Senate. The development came on the same day as highly anticipated presidential forum moderated by Tucker, during which he interviewed many of the Republican candidates. Snippets of the exchanges from the summit made headlines throughout the day. So, an unnamed number of people being laid off from Fox, but again, I remind you, they're controlled opposition. Turn off Fox, it's bad for you. And that is your layoff report for the day, July 14th, 2023. Let's talk about student debt forgiveness. Ed Krasenstein starting off. Breaking, Joe Biden forgives $39 billion in student debts. The Biden admin just announced it's canceling the student loans of 804,000 Americans. This, however, is not a broad repayment to just any students. It's still a broad repayment, by the way, like many people are reporting or implying on social media. The way this repayment works is based on certain criteria and system that was already actually in place. Technically correct, again. This is a fix that's being made to what are referred to as income-driven repayment plans. To clarify, the admin released a statement saying those fixes are part of the department's commitment to address historical failures in the admin of federal student loan program, which qualifying payments made under income-driven repayment plans that should have moved borrowers closer to forgiveness were not accounted for. Borrowers are eligible for forgiveness if they've accumulated the equivalent of either 20 or 25 years of qualifying months. Basically, the admin is being more lenient towards those who paused their payments or had to make partial payments in times when they were struggling financially. So that's the announcement. We've got a couple stories talking about that, but essentially, and this was done in the dead of the night, this is a step around what the Supreme Court said that they were going to do, and they made no fanfare of it, so basically nobody could step in. So let's read a little bit of this. We're going to start with NPC News. Education Department announces student loan forgiveness for 800,000 borrowers. From Sally Bronston. The Education Department, announced Friday it would automatically forgive student loans for more than 800,000 student borrowers. The action is a result of what the department calls a fix to income-driven repayment plans. It's expected to total $39 billion in federal student loan forgiveness. The department said the move will address administrative issues in the income-driven system. Under the plan, federal student loan borrowers are eligible for forgiveness after 20 or 25 years of payments, depending on the plan, but for some, qualifying payments that should have moved borrowers closer to forgiveness were not accounted for, it said in a news release. I would love to see the spreadsheet on how that was determined. I always look for the invoices or the source material, but I would still be willing to bet that there was some funny math that was used in some of these things to ensure and make sure that the projected outcome and the desired outcome came through this. The department said the move will address administrative issues in the income-driven repayment system. Under the plans, federal student loan borrowers are eligible for forgiveness after 20 or 25 years of payments, depending on the plan. But for some, qualifying payments that should have moved borrowers closer to forgiveness were not accounted for, it said in a news release. The Supreme Court struck down Biden's plan to forgive up to $20,000 in debt for 43 million federal student loan borrowers in a 6-3 ruling last month, dealing a blow to one of his key campaign promises. So they're saying $39 billion right now for this. What did we determine the number was for $20,000 for 43 million? Let me make sure I got all my zeros right. So 43, and we'll do the 10 to start with. Okay, so that is a $430 billion program. So what's interesting about this is this was supposed to be 43 million borrowers, and it was only supposed to go, give or take, well, let's see, 440 million. So 290 million, or billion rather, more, to include almost 42 million more people. There is some funny math that's going on here, and I'm very confused by it. And I'm also wondering, by the way, how much debt that these 800,000 people have taken out combined as they go for this. Let's just average it. 39,000 million billion divided by 800,000. So somehow, with going $10,000 for 43 million borrowers, he's give or take doing about 5 times as much on average for only 800,000 borrowers. There is some funny math that's going on here, and I don't really care for it. Immediately after the ruling, Biden says his admin would explore other avenues of relief. Today's decision has closed one path. Now we're going to pursue another, he said. By the way, I had an email that came in, and I thought actually it was spam coming from some kind of scammer, but I've seen reports on Twitter today that a bunch of other people got the same email, which means it likely wasn't spam, and instead was propaganda put out against the Hatch Act by Miguel Cardona, and it said, I'll find the one that Sticks had because mine's in my spam folder on my email, and it's going to take me a little bit a little bit more to find this. Let me run over to Twitter because Sticks tweeted it out, and it was fairly recently. Where is it? There we are. We're going to read this verbatim to you. Like I said, I dismissed this as spam when I first saw it. So the letter, Sticks tweets out, "Why is my tax money going to a bureau making blatantly political statements and emails to anyone who ever had a student loan? Isn't this outright illegal? That's about all. Peace out." And yes, by the Hatch Act, this would be blatantly illegal. And a reading, and everybody in the world knows Sticks' real name, so I'm not doxing when I put this out here. Plus, he put it out himself. The recent Supreme Court decision on student debt relief. Tarl. On June 30th, the Supreme Court issued a decision invalidating the Biden-Harris administration's student debt relief plan to provide up to $20,000 in one-time relief for more than 40 million student loan borrowers. "We believe the Supreme Court got it wrong. That is a violation of the Hatch Act. President Biden and I recognize how critical student debt relief would have been for tens of millions of Americans and their families, and we understand many of you may be wondering how the court's decision affects you. This decision from the Supreme Court means the admin cannot move forward with a one-time student debt relief plan announced last year. The department had already approved applications for more than 16 million borrowers. If you're one of these borrowers, we are unable to provide you with relief under this program due to the court's ruling." This is a vote by. If anybody doesn't see the Hatch Act here, and again, this is of course under the understanding that this actually came from Cardona, which Sticks didn't scroll this down, but I remember from mine it had the signature of Cardona on it. So if this actually did come from Cardona, this is blatant Hatch Act violation on your taxpayer dollars too. So that is what they have for that. And again, even what they're doing here with the 39 million for the 800,000 people, vote by. Promise. I promise you that's what we see here from this. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about UPS. And they're going to juxtapose this against the Hollywood strike from KTLA to start with. Think the Hollywood strike is bad? Just wait. This is an op-ed from David Lazarus. As actors joined the writers on the picket line Friday, analysts estimated a prolonged walkout could result in $3 billion hit to the economy. That's bad news, not just for creatives, but also for many businesses that rely on Hollywood for their livelihoods, talent agencies, advertising firms, caterers, and much. But the Tinseltown work stoppage could be relatively small potatoes compared to what might be coming down the pike. The Teamsters say their 340,000 union members will walk off the job at delivery giant UPS if a new contract isn't reached by the end of the month. Well, does anybody have any popcorn? Anderson Economic Group estimates that just a 10-day walkout of UPS could cost the economy more than $7 billion. That's a $4.6 billion hit to companies and consumers, causing significant and lasting harm for small businesses, household workers, sole practitioners, and online retailers across the country. But that's not all. A UPS strike would also result in direct losses to the company of $816 million, according to Anderson, as well as $1.1 billion in lost wages for striking workers. If indeed a strike occurs and the losses are as huge as predicted, that would be the costliest labor stoppage in U.S. history. Which, by the way, they screamed the same thing about the rail stoppage. And if I remember correctly, the rail stoppage would have been the highest still if they hadn't stopped it in its tracks, no pun intended. What are you getting at over here, Mogwai? Let's read this. 525,600 minutes. 525,000 loans forgiven, so dear. 525,600 bribes. How do you measure a crime? Oh, it's the Rent song. I've never seen Rent, and I'm not afraid to admit that. Although that is one I've actually been curious about. I like musical theater more than a straight person should admit to. But that's one I've never seen. UPS said on Friday it's preparing for the worst by training non-union employees and managers to step in and pick up some of the slack. We'll talk about that in its own on a later article, but keep in mind that UPS handles about 20 million packages a day. The company's non-union folk simply can't accommodate that volume of work. For consumers who have spent years learning the joys of e-commerce, a UPS strike would mean much longer wait times for goodies ordered online. Wow, way to appeal to the decadence of America in the midst of, the edge of a recession. UPS had only one nationwide strike in its history, roughly 2-week walkout. In '97, nearly all U.S. operations came to a halt. Amazon was only 3 years old at the time and still largely a bookstore. Things are, to say the least, a little bit different now. So, that is going to be a little bit of a hell on the Biden admin especially. So let's talk just a bit about what's happening here. Now, number one, this is not... UPS handles about 25 million packages a day. Lindsey Graham's got them beat by at least 5. Nice. Let's talk about this for a second. Now, number one, I don't necessarily believe that this is going to be as costly as KTLA reports, but it's still going to make a dent. Some things to keep in mind. DeJoy has the post office running on a very, very lean operation right now, but can step in and pick up the slack at a moment's notice if he needs to. And yes, there's a lot of e-commerce and regular commerce that just goes via UPS because the USPS itself can't really get it out there, especially on package delivery, as efficiently as UPS and FedEx can. Now, FedEx can step in and pick up some of the slack off of this. It's not going to be a big pickup, by any stretch of the imagination because FedEx is all privately contracted. Instead of just being able to pull on a scab at FedEx and saying, hey, we need a temporary worker to come in and pick things up. These are small businesses on the ground level. On the trucking level, it's a little bit differently, but these are small businesses, and that's just what gets to your door. Plus, of course, everybody who's going to have to get onto the line in the sorting facilities and the less than truckload and the dock to dock and everything else that would go along with FedEx picking up some of the slack. But I know they also like to use Amazon and the decadence of Amazon in the midst of this. And keep in mind that Amazon largely, for the most part, doesn't depend on UPS anymore. They do have UPS for some stuff still, but the vast majority of Amazon's business has moved over into internal delivery. They run their own vans. I see their vans every day. Oddly enough, their vans don't come here where I live. Anything that I've had off Amazon for the past few months has come on the last leg of its journey via USPS. The van will get it out to the central processing center over in La Crosse, but after it's there, it gets handed off to your regular route driver and shows up in my mailbox. So Amazon will be affected by this, but not to the level that KTLA5 is trying to make it seem like. And again, there are some mitigation efforts, but they're not going to stand up by seeing all these people walk out across the country. Let's read from Insider. UPS has started training managers to keep packages moving in the event of a strike, from Emma Cosgrove. The July 31st deadline for UPS and other union that represents 340,000 of its employees to agree to a new contract and avoid a strike is quickly approaching, and both sides are ramping up preparations in case of a walkout. UPS reps told some customers Thursday that non-union management staff across the country would begin training for strike roles on Friday, according to a customer briefed on the plans. By a UPS representative, the customer was required to sign a non-disclosure agreement in order to learn about the contingency plans. So he violated that, and he's probably getting sued. UPS told the customer, a mid-sized retailer, that it's prioritizing which customers will still receive service in the case of a strike, and warned that many packages will require extra transit time. UPS is encouraging its sales reps to protect package volumes at all costs and report customers considering taking their business elsewhere immediately, according to an internal company document viewed by Supply Chain Dive. Rival FedEx, on the other hand, has encouraged shippers to start working with them now rather than waiting for a strike. It's also warned delivery drivers about possible unrest should the Teamsters walk out. UPS told its customers it's still committed to reaching the deal by the deadline. Both parties have acknowledged that part-time pay is the final issue holding up the agreement. While we have made great progress and are close to reaching an agreement, we have a responsibility as an essential service provider to take steps to help ensure that we can deliver our customers' packages if the Teamsters choose to strike, a UPS spokesperson told Insider via email. Over the coming weeks, many of our U.S. employees will participate in training that would help them safely serve our customers if there is a labor disruption. So, the managers are getting in, and we're close to a contract, but we're not there. Now, the first and most obvious question that I have about this, and this again goes back to the rail strike. Yeah, Mogwai says this will be interesting in right-to-work states, which, by the way, I live in. I live in a right-to-work state. So I'm kind of curious as to how that's actually going to happen, because I know that UPS's Teamsters union takes extra precautions to make sure that they're just inside of the law and making sure that their non-union members have a harder time at work. Just inside of the law. But my big question here is President Biden going to come in and intervene and break this up? and demand, by the way, another situation where Congress passes a law. This will be the interesting side of this too. Biden doesn't have a Democrat-controlled Congress anymore. And Kevin McCarthy can come back and tell Biden to go and fuck himself. Now we know that Nancy was in a great big hurry to try to make sure that the Teamsters Union, the rail union, got back to work and was not allowed to strike. In fact, they took extra care to make sure it was illegal for the union to strike, as good Democrats do. But he doesn't have a friendly Congress anymore, so just for the political gain, Kevin McCarthy can come out and say, no, you deal with supply chain disruptions on your own. These people want to strike, they're free to strike, and it's in their contract, so this sounds like a you problem, Mr. Biden. But we will see. We're about to get a very, very interesting 2 weeks. CNN, just briefly, a 10-day strike could be the costliest in U.S. history. Again, because the rail strike got broken up. A 10-day strike could cost the U.S. economy $7.1 billion. That could make it the costliest work stoppage ever in U.S. history, according to an estimate from a Michigan economic research firm that studies the cost of labor disruptions. Direct losses at UPS of $860 million, as well as $1.1 billion in lost wages. So, not to mention again, what happens when your packages don't get where they need to go. So, some things to watch for with that. Mogwai says 97 was the last UPS strike that Clinton let it go, mainly because he was distracted by the Oval Orifice. I know I paraphrased what you said there, but I think it works a little bit better that way. So, UPS strike is coming. Call your local FedEx driver because you may need that person in the next few days. Alright, from Politico. The House just passed a defense bill with controversial abortion, LGBTQI, RAMIGI, XTBY, AEIOU, sometimes Y measures. It doesn't stand a chance in the Senate. From Connor O'Brien. And that is, by the way, going to be the fate of most of the things that happen with the Freedom Caucus putting their fingers into it. And I will come right out and say that I'm glad for the Freedom Caucus because with McCarthy at the helm, and this was one of the reasons that I was glad that they went through and gave him the 1 vote threshold to bring him forward for a vote of no confidence, is because he would have just passed the defense bill and told the Freedom Caucus to take a walk. If he'd have had the same protections that Nancy Pelosi had as Speaker. It would have been government business with the uniparty as usual. And realistically, spending is just about frozen at this point in the government. We've got the essential spending out there, that was the big focus of the debt ceiling. But new spending? Not so much, because anything McCarthy brings forward gets killed in the Senate. You'll notice, by the way, that that was the point where we, even though we're still ridiculously high in inflation right now, where it got to the point of, it's manageable, and it's going down. It's not actually going down, by the way. But where it came down to the point where it appears where it's a third of what it was when they go year over year instead of from the bottom to the top. We got to the point where most of your new spending is frozen. Friendly Democrat House, friendly Democrat Senate, mostly uniparty Senate. Kamala Harris is the tiebreaker. Budget reconciliations everywhere. And we have 9.1% inflation. McCarthy at the helm and government spending, new spending frozen, essentially. And again, it's still not great. It's 3% compounded on top of 9%, but there's some glimmer of hope with it. House Republicans united to narrowly pass a defense policy legislation on Friday that restricts the Pentagon policies on abortion access, medical care for transgender troops, and a diversity in a narrow vote. But the mini-culture war provisions Republicans packed into the must-pass Defense Authorization Act to win conservative votes are doomed in the Democrat-controlled Senate. So sad. So sad. You on the audio platform can't see me faking the tears in my eyes. The 219 to 210 vote on Friday saw all but 4 Democrats oppose the bill, which authorizes a national defense budget of $886 billion for fiscal 2024, and we wonder why our national debt is running away. Conversely, only 4 Republicans opposed the measure, as McCarthy held a conference together to clear the legislation. I take solace in the fact that it's not going to become law and we have an opportunity to correct it, said Adam Smith of Washington, the ranking Democrat in the House Armed Services Committee, of the path forward. But it's really disturbing how divisive this all has become, the degree to which the Republican majority wants to attack diversity. Bottom line, attack trans people, attack women, attack people of color. The typically bipartisan bill dissolved into a nearly GOP-only measure Thursday, as ugly fights over abortion, transgender medical care, and diversity programs that have shown up in other bills in the House took center stage. As the rightward tilt became clear on the House floor, Smith and other Democrats who previously supported the NDAA and the Armed Services Committee derided the revamped bill as an ode to bigotry and ignorance. Hey, you can call it whatever you want. If the government is stopped, I'm a happy guy. McCarthy needed near unanimous GOP support in his 5-seat majority to clear the bill. McCarthy, who as a minority leader lamented Democrats passing a party-line defense bill in 2019 as failing a test of whether they could put their radicalism aside and work across the aisle, and his team spent the week navigating GOP infighting over whether to hold votes on controversial amendments which initially stalled the bill and to minimize defections. Again, when the government is stopped, this guy is a happy guy. Let's talk about the Republican Forum. The Daily Wire, I've got a block of Daily Wire and Blaze articles here, so we'll be talking about that. We're going to start with some interview. Well, that's what we're going to do is interview clips. We're going to start with Mike Pence. From the Daily Wire, Mike Pence and Tucker Carlson clash in heated interview from Ryan Saavedra. Republican presidential candidate and former Vice President Pence clashed with Tucker during a combative interview Friday in Iowa. Pence's interview at the Family Leadership Summit focused on the war in Ukraine, his beliefs about what happened during the January 6th selfie fest, and his views on the 2020 presidential election. As Pence talked about some NATO countries potentially starting to transfer fighter jets to Ukraine, Carlson interrupted and pushed back. We do have video of this too, by the way. I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President. Have you? I know you're running for president. You're distressed about the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks? Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years. Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the U.S., and it's visible. Let's watch.
We're saying maybe January we'll let somebody transfer some jets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President. Have you? I know you're running for president. You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. Right. And yet your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. Right. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern. I'm running for president of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I think Joe Biden has weakened America at home and abroad. And as President of the United States, we're going to restore law and order in our cities. We're going to secure our border. We're going to get this economy moving again. And we're going to make sure that we have men and women on our courts at every level that will stand for the right to life and defend all the God-given liberties enshrined in our Constitution. Anybody that says that we can't be the leader of the free world and solve our problems at home has a pretty small view of the greatest nation on earth. We can do both. And as President of the United States, we will secure our border, we will support our military, we will revive our economy and stand by our values, and we will also lead the world for freedom under my administration.
Yeah, get rid of him. We can see where his priorities lie. Globalism away! Thank you, Mike Pence. Team America World Police 2.0. We've got a couple from Tim Scott. Starting again with the Daily Wire. Tim Scott to Tucker Carlson. America's national vital interest is degrading the Russian military. Really? I thought it would be getting our GDP up. I thought maybe it would be getting job growth. Reining in inflation. Stopping spending. Nope, it's degrading the Russian military. These are not serious people. And I used to like Tim Scott. I thought that he would be the one that I would have the most chance of supporting. Well, let's not get carried away here, I guess. One of the things with that is the fact that he can't do anything without his little focus group. Which he can't, by the way. He can't do a thing without his little focus group, which is why he had to have the little focus group tell him he could run for president. That was one of the only reasons at the start that I wasn't going to vote for him. But this right here, nope. Not going to happen. Let's read. From Ryan Saavedra. Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott told Tucker Carlson on Friday he believes that a critical national security interest for the United States is degrading the Russian military. Scott appeared on stage with Carlson at the Family Leadership Summit in Iowa, where he was asked questions about Ukraine, illegal immigration, and more. Carlson asked Scott what he thought about President Biden authorizing the U.S. military to mobilize up to 3,000 reservists to support Europe. We'll be talking about that a little bit later, too, by the way. Scott said he does not want U.S. soldiers engulfed in the war between Russia and Ukraine, which he also referred to as a genocide. America's national vital interest is degrading the Russian military, Scott said. When we degrade the Russian military, we make sure that our home front is safer and that our NATO allied partners would cause us to send soldiers over is safe. Team America World Police. When we have the land contiguous with Ukraine safe, we keep our American soldiers at home, and our primary objective should only be to engage with America's vital national interests, he continued. And unfortunately, President Biden has no ability to understand and appreciate what that looks like. Let's listen.
A nation that great has to beware of threats to its very existence.
Absolutely.
Yesterday, Biden mobilized reserves. What do you think of that? And are you concerned that we're moving, as we seem to be, toward war with Russia?
Yeah, so I would say that without any question, we should never allow American soldiers to be engulfed into the challenge between Ukraine and Russia. Our boots on the ground should not be there. The ability my mama wanted to preach her, so I'm going to stand up and do it the Southern way.
Preach!
Hallelujah!
Oh,
So, literally, I think one of the failures of President Biden has been his inability to articulate America's national vital interest in the conflict or the genocide in Ukraine. America's national vital interest is degrading the Russian military. When we degrade the Russian military, we make sure that our home front is safer and that our NATO ally partners that would cause us to send soldiers over is safe. When we have the land contiguous with Ukraine safe, we keep our American soldiers at home, and our primary objective should only be to engage when America's vital national interests are being engaged in. Unfortunately, President Biden has no ability to understand and appreciate what that looks like.
During another moment, when discussing the war in Ukraine, the two discussed what should be done to bring the war to an end. I'm a little curious about this myself.
You know, the Third World War very quickly, so why not force a peace?
How would you do that?
Well, you could tell Ukraine, and they are a client state of the United States, without American backing, there's kind of no Ukraine. We're literally paying the salaries of their bureaucrats. We want you to sit down, as they tried to do, but were stopped by our government, and stop this war. Yeah. And reach a peace as one does, where both sides, you know, concede some of their interests. Like, why wouldn't that be in our interest to do that?
I think the faster we get to peace, the better off we are. What we don't want to do, from my perspective, is allow ourselves to ask for a premature peace that cannot be achieved as the alliances continue to come together. To the extent that we can find our path out of this situation, the better off we are.
So what's the point at which we'll know that we've achieved our goal? And I say that within the context of having watched 20 years of occupation in Afghanistan, where nobody could answer the question, what's the point?
Yes.
And no one in Congress ever asked that question, amazingly. So what is the specific goal here?
Yeah, so I would say that the objective should be for Zelensky and Ukraine to be able to achieve victory by maintaining as much of their territory as they possibly can, and then seeing the resources that we've deployed, along with our Western alliances, achieving the peace that I believe comes when you get these two folks to sit down and have a conversation that allows them to determine where those lines will be drawn for the next 100 years.
Okay.
Interesting. See, he goes into starts from full interventionism, and then it comes down and says, okay, well, the first thing we need to do is get everybody back at peace. So I'm not 100% sure where he stands. And one more about illegal immigration.
I can't imagine many people would disagree with that. I wonder what you do with the millions of foreign nationals here illegally, many with fake papers, who are here. Like, what do you do with them? You become president.
Yes.
Sworn in January 2025, and you've got, let's say, 7 million people who've come in the last 4 years. What do you do with them? Do you deport them?
I think it's a very difficult task to deport them all at one time, but here's what we make sure they never do, is you never break the law and become an American citizen by breaking the laws.
Well, hold on, but would you deport any of them? How many would you deport?
I think you have to start the process of identifying where they are. Listen, this is a really important question. I hope that we don't miss this. Because those folks who come into our country illegally, even those who are seeking asylum, go around our country, and some of the asylum dates for your court appearance is 2033, 10 years from now. So finding those who have come to our country illegally has to be a part of the job number one. And that means that we're going to have to take a look panoramically across our country and make sure that we stop this thing called sanctuary cities and sanctuary states that receive our resources, to make sure that the federal government cannot figure out where the folks are. So in order for us to achieve the goals that the really brilliant guy on the stage, I'm not talking about myself, wants us to achieve. That was a compliment, by the way.
Oh, sorry, it went right over my head. I was like,
I want to make sure I get it. Sometimes I give compliments, I have to let people
Brilliant's
know.
Brilliant's a little strong.
Okay. Really smart cookie over here. Achieve, we have to identify where they are. And I'm not going to pretend that that will be an easy task, but that should be the responsibility.
Well, wait a second. The federal government's like knows where everyone is because everyone has a smartphone and they're tracking you.
Yes.
You know, so like we know anyone using a fake social security number, why not just like drop them off in Tijuana? Bye-bye.
Well, I'm going to appoint Tucker Carlson as my bye-bye ambassador to figure this out. So we're going to work together on this. And I'm
a sincere question. Like maybe the reason that people come by the millions, uninvited, illegally, making a mockery of the rule of law. I have to obey the law, but someone from Haiti doesn't? Or what? But they come because they know that no politician will say, come and you're leaving. Like they don't put up with this in Japan.
Absolutely. Well, they don't put up
you're gone. Why not do that?
Wow. Again, Tim Scott actually does make some good points as far as the immigration aspect of it, with making a priority finding where the people who don't have the papers are in the country. I am a little wary about the Sanctuary Cities Avenue, not because I like Sanctuary Cities by any stretch of the imagination, but it should not be a federal issue onto how a locality governs and follows its laws. I've been very adamant on that, whether it's the good or the bad, because I keep on my federalist roots. And also, when you go take away the sanctuary city status from them, places like Missouri lose their ability to effectively hold a Second Amendment sanctuary city and sanctuary state status as well. So that for me is a cost-benefit analysis. But just how much time that Tim Scott spent in this 2.5-minute clip kissing Tucker Carlson's ass. Tucker Carlson is not in the RNC. He doesn't decide whether or not you have a political future. And that is something that you need to remember, Tim Scott. He's powerful because he can get more people out to vote for you in the primaries, and he has a massive audience. But he is not the be-all, end-all. I almost regret the fact that I watched that one. All right, let's grab one last one here from The Wire. We're going to skip the Blaze one because that's on basically that clip we just watched. Tucker shreds Asa Hutchinson over transgender treatments for kids. From Ryan Saavedra. Tucker grilled Republican candidate and former Governor Asa Hutchinson on Friday over his past veto of a bill banning transgender procedures for minors. Yeah, this is going to be the culture war thing, and this is not going to go over well for the culture warriors, especially in Arkansas. I believe in a limited role of government, Hutchinson told Carlson. And so, I don't think that California ought to be able to tell parents you need to have gender-affirming care for the children. The government should not do that. In the same way, let's keep the government out of it unless it's an extreme case. Well, sterilizing children, and in many points sterilizing children going around the parents, is an extreme case. And let's let the parents guide the children. I stand with the parents. Carlson said he agreed with standing up to the parents before he started to bring up Hutchinson's veto. Let's watch.
Face. And I believe in a limited role of government. And so, if I don't think that California ought to be able to tell parents, you need to have gender-affirming care for the children. The government should not do that. And in the same way, let's keep the government out of it unless it's that extreme case, and let's let parents guide the children. I stand with parents.
So, and amen for standing with parents, and I think everyone in the room would agree with that. But the reason I asked the question was not to bring up a sore subject, which I know that it is, but to ask if in the subsequent 2 years, you had said that you drew the line at castration of physical altercation of a child's body because it's permanent. But in the subsequent 2 years, I think we've learned that hormone therapy for prepubescent children is permanent. It changes the bone structure, it changes the brain of the child. A lot of people believe, including me, that it destroys the child's life. But it is permanent. It's not reversible. So given that and the standard you just articulated, do you have different feelings? I mean, this is a permanent change we are making to a child. Why would we allow that if we don't allow surgery?
Well, permanent change is one issue, but also hormonal treatment is a different issue and can be a different issue. And whenever you look at the bill that I vetoed, there was not any grandfather clause in there. Again, I respect legislators that have a different view, but I think independently, I think of the parents, I think of the Constitution, and actually the court, if you read the decision of the federal judge that struck it down as unconstitutional, really sided with parents as well.
But how is it treatment? I guess that's my question. If you have a child who's born a boy, I want to become a girl, he hasn't gone through puberty yet, he's say 10. Is it treatment to prevent him from going through the natural process of adolescence? How is that treatment? It seems not like treatment. It seems like something else.
Well, you have to, Tucker, I hope that we'll be able to talk about some issues. I know that...
Well, this is one of the biggest issues in the country, and I think every person in this room would agree that it is a central issue, because these are children who are being altered permanently, and you can defend that alteration, that change, if you like, but there's really no debate about whether or not it's permanent. And so I think it's fair to ask you in a calm, rational, and I very much hope polite way, why you would support that.
I hate where they cut that off. Because he doesn't give Asa, or the Blaze rather, doesn't give Asa a chance to answer this. And I'd like to sit down at some point over the weekend and see the actual full interview with Asa Hutchinson off of this. And that's one of the harder parts with this too, is that it's a permanent thing. I am right along with Asa on this and saying that we need to get the government out of more and more and more things, but we've got parents who are literally going out and castrating children because it's a fashion sense, because it's a trendy thing to do. And it really bothers me, the fact that that nobody wants to do something about this. Of course we should do this at a societal level. My biggest fear is that we may have come back to a point where we are too far beyond the society. And it has to be done at a government level. I hate giving the government this kind of power, but I feel so strongly about protecting the children, it cracks through that a little bit. So there is your Republican Forum for the night. Let's move on here. What do we got? An hour? Yeah, I started a little bit late. We had some breaking stuff that was happening right as I was getting started. And I took a little bit of time and decided whether or not to put it on the stack. And no, we are going to hold it off until Monday. Speaking of the presidential races, mid-level court hands Democrats a victory in New York redistricting case, which will give, I believe the final count will give Democrats 2 more districts in a state that they were going to win on the presidential side anyway. Let's read from Politico's Bill Mahoney. A mid-level appellate court sided Thursday with Democrats in their quest to take another crack at gerrymandering New York's congressional district lines. A judicial panel said a redistricting process that would ultimately end up in the Democrat-dominated legislature can start from scratch. This would result in new maps being drawn in time for the 2024 elections. But the case is expected to be appealed to the Court of Appeals, the state's top court, which will ultimately decide the issue. That looming decision will potentially reshape the political calculus in the congressional elections in New York, which has emerged as one of the country's top battlegrounds. Former Rep. John Faso, who has helped organize Republican efforts around redistricting in recent years, confirmed the ruling will be challenged. We remain confident the Court of Appeals will uphold the decision in Harkin-Ryder versus Hochul, and that fair lines will be established by the district court, will be maintained, and we preserve the New York Constitution's prohibition against mid-decade redistricting, he said in a statement. The state judiciary threw out lines Democrats drew in 22 that would have given the party clear advantages in 22 of New York's 26 congressional seats. Then court-drawn maps and strong Republican turnout resulted in last year's midterm elections, where Democrats won only 15 of the 26 seats, which, by the way, still gave them a majority. The Democrat maps were tossed when the courts concluded the lawmakers did not take the proper steps before drawing the lines themselves. A new independent redistricting commission was supposed to come up with 2 draft plans before the state legislature could pick up the map-making pen. But they never met again after releasing one draft plan, and a Steuben County judge took over the process. So, in the interest of consistency, I will actually come out and say that I think that this should go to the Democrats on this one, and that the court made the right decision. The issue at hand with this, and what might play in Republicans' favor for this, is the fact that federal courts and the Supreme Court have handed Democrats in very, very red states like Alabama wins in this exact kind of situation. So in order for this to stay consistent on a Supreme Court level, this does mean that this will have to get challenged and go in Republicans' favor. Because the Supreme Court has already decided in the off party's favor in a similar case to this, which I disagreed with. If you want to draw the maps in your state, you win. You either make your state better to the point that you get more people in that are sympathetic to your cause, or you make better policies and win over your opponents. But it's how it's always supposed to. That's, by the way, how it was always supposed to be, not how it is always supposed to be. That's how it was always supposed to be in the Constitution, is that to draw your maps in your states, the first thing that you had to do was win power. And if you could not win power in your state, then you didn't get to draw the maps. And yes, I understand that with, like, Chicago drawing the maps in Illinois, you get those funky lines where you've got just a little stretched line running from Springfield basically to St. Louis. And another district literally going around it. They will gerrymander however it takes to win, but it's because they have the majority in one of their seats. And Texas will do the same. And so would Alabama had not the Supreme Court intervened. Let's talk Biden, because that hasn't been talked to death enough. From the Daily Wire, top Democrats reach out to potential Biden replacements, claim that he is not running. We'll talk about him claiming them claiming he's not running too, because I want to address that briefly. But starting from Ryan Saavedra here, top Democrats are reportedly reaching out to rising stars in the party and are telling them that President Biden is not running for re-election. CNN reported that the top Democrats and donors have reached out to possible replacements for Biden and had conversations about them getting in the race as Biden struggles with the White House. Well, you've already got RFK Jr., who is getting ground somehow. Numerous polls have shown Biden struggles against the top 2 Republican presidential candidates, Trump and DeSantis. Those who are placing the calls to the prospective Democrat candidates are telling them that despite what 80-year-old Biden has said, and we'll talk about that, and despite launching his campaign, he actually will not run for president. The Democrats who seemingly tried to raise their national profile in recent months as Biden stumbles, both literally and figuratively, is Gavin Newsom, who I don't believe can make it in a national race. That's the problem with Newsom, is I don't think that he can run to the center in the general in order to make it through to the onto the top of the national ticket. I know Harris can't. Harris is even more unpopular than Biden is. Newsom polls great in hard left areas to Democrats. But the disadvantage that Newsom has over what Barack Obama had in 2008 is that Newsom is very, very high profile in running as hard as he can to the left. Whereas Obama was relatively unknown at the time. He'd only been a senator for like 20 seconds after being only a community organizer there, and that the internet was still in its infancy. So we didn't have massive amounts of video evidence of some of the leftward moves that Obama really had out there. He could still play to the Union Democrat. Most of it was a lie, but he could still play to the Union Democrat at the time that he was coming into power. Newsom doesn't have that advantage because he is on video. He has a track record, a easily tracked track record of running as hard as he can to the left. I don't think that Newsom can do it. He can go back and he can fight with DeSantis all that he wants, but he can't play to the middle to the same, honestly, the same way that I don't think DeSantis can play to the middle. And then my next question comes is, if it's not Newsom, who is it? Whitmer, the lockdown queen. She won't crack 1%. Hochul, who came into power on technicality and then threw down the tyrannical gauntlet almost immediately. No, Abrams is a perpetual loser. I understand that she's trying to run from the center in a very red state, but she can't even pull that off against Brian Kemp, of all people. So who do they have? Hakeem Jeffries, who runs as hard at the left as he can. The problem with the Democrat Party in trying to run somebody outside of Biden is the fact that the people that are strong in their party are running so wildly to the left that you can't catch them, and the people who are in the center are so wildly weak, nobody can keep them. Nobody has any desire. There's no. It's like looking at Jeb Bush all over again. As far as Biden goes, this is important to watch for President Biden right now because he's in a precarious position. I actually believe the DNC when they say that he's not going to run and he's actually not going to take it to the finish line. That he'll quietly step aside once they figure out who is actually going to be strong in this. The problem with Biden, especially given the fact that he's got a major international conflict going on that he's overseeing and putting money to, is the fact that he actually has to pretend that he's the one, that he's the guy. And this actually has nothing to do with electoral politics. If Putin catches wind and whiff that Biden is going to just step aside and surrender at this point, he will push over the D'Onofrio because he can. He will call the American leader weak, and he actually might start to take a poke over Napoleon too. It would be very ill-advised for him, but he might just start to, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. And it's the same with other leaders on the world stage who all know that Biden himself, the steward, is a weak as crap candidate. This whole thing that the paid operatives come out and say, oh, look, we're respected on the world stage. That is a load of shit. But he has to put the facade up there. Hey, yeah, you can't mess with me, Vladimir. And Kim Jong-un, you can't screw with me, man. Because I'm powerful and I'm vigorous. And I'm going to win the presidency again because they love me so much over here. And I'm so powerful, man. And I'm going to go take a nap now. Here's a bit of a disturbing one. Those of you listening on the audio platform will be glad, although this video clip has been shared all over the internet. President pretends to gobble up little girl before sniffing her on the tarmac before leaving Finland, and Twitter has plenty to say about it. Yes, I'm sure they do. From Wills Robinson for DailyMail.com. Most kids would dream of a personal encounter with the leader of the free world, but this little girl looked mortified. Again, for good reason, as Biden pretended to gobble her up and sniff her during a bizarre exchange in Finland. The 8-year-old president was caught engaging with a mom and a daughter as he prepared to fly back to Washington from Europe. Biden was in Helsinki following the NATO summit in Lithuania, where he was also slammed for making creepy comments to a female Finnish reporter. It's the latest bizarre clip of the president who's often raised questions in the past for his interactions with youngsters. Well, let's watch.
There's going to play out. Hang on. There's going to play out. Hang on.
No, I'm actually honestly going to say this is probably not that uncommon of an occurrence. When the elderly man knows the kid, when it's a close family friend, or even the grandfather. I've seen plenty of this kind of stuff. Grandfather to grandchild. Great uncle to great nephew or niece. I've seen that kind of stuff all the time. But to go back up and do it to a complete stranger before running out and getting a sniff, when you are known for being a habitual kid sniffer, somebody needs to get his handlers back on him. Good God. Let's see. Posobiec getting in on the action with this clip from the Post-Millennial. This is talking about weapons of mass destruction again, by the way. Posobiec asks, is this Operation Atlantic resolved? We'll listen to a little bit of this. This is a 3-minute clip, so I don't think we're going to go through the entire thing, but we'll listen to a little bit of this one. Try to keep them to 2 minutes when I can.
The illegal Russian offensive has been swift, callous, and brutal. It's barbaric. Putin's illegal occupation of Kyiv and the impending Chinese blockade of Taiwan has created a two-front national security crisis that requires more troops than the volunteer military can supply. I have received guidance from General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, that the recommended way forward will be to invoke the Selective Service Act.
That doesn't sound like Biden. I might go out on a limb and say bullshit off this because this sounds like AI. Yeah, I'm going to apologize for putting this one up here. Justice Unbun says the video appears to be a deepfake. The rhythm of his words is all wrong. He seems to be talking without taking a breath. The whole image is fuzzy, sync and of sound and image is off. This is fake. Kind of makes me, because I watched it with closed captions on while I was organizing articles. But yeah, as soon as I heard that voice, I'm like, no, this is fake. I should have checked this one first. That's on me.
As is my authority as president. The first to be called in a sequence determined by national lottery will be men and women whose 20th birthday falls during calendar year 2023. Remember, you're not sending your sons and daughters to war. You're sending them to freedom. God bless our troops and God bless Ukraine.
God bless our troops. God.
That's a fake. But one that wasn't a fake from the New York Post, Biden says Finnish reporter may not be able to go home, confuses Iceland and Ireland, from Stephen Nelson. President Biden grew flustered with a reporter there on Thursday and angrily told her that she doesn't know if she will make it home. After he confused the nations of Iceland and Ireland, the latter of which he called his home, despite nearly 2 centuries of genealogical distance. Lida Tiki, Finland's public broadcaster, YLE, was the second member of the press in 2 days to provoke a presidential outburst in response to a question. What actions will you take to assure Finland that the U.S. will remain a reliable NATO partner for decades to come, she asked at a press conference after noting fringe American politicians who oppose U.S. membership in the Atlantic Alliance. I absolutely guarantee it, man. Biden began, citing overwhelming support for NATO from the U.S. public and Congress before adding, no one can guarantee the future, man, but this is the best bet anyone could make. The reporter then addressed Finnish President Sauli Niinisto, asking, hearing the answer that no one can guarantee a future, are you worried that political instability in the U.S. will cause issues in the alliance in the future? Let me be clear. I didn't say we guarantee. We don't guarantee, man. We couldn't guarantee the future. And you can't tell me whether you're going to be able to go home tonight. No one can be sure what they're going to do. I'm saying, as sure as anything could possibly be said about the American foreign policy, man, look, Fat, we'll stay connected to NATO. Niinisto tried to lighten the mood, telling the reporter, it seems the president has answered your problems, to light chuckles from the assembled media. Probably uncomfortable. Now, do I think with intent the president threatened this reporter? No. No, I think he just had an old man outburst and didn't think about what he said. Would we be in a situation where if this was a Republican candidate, all the mainstream media would be saying that the Republican candidate threatened the politician? Oh, hell yes. Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. The call-in guy says, is this some dopey MAGA show? I am not really anywhere political, so I have problems with every major candidate. And also I'll remind you, call-in guy, that nobody's forcing you to be here, so there's that. From the Daily Mail, Biden authorizes sending an additional 3,000 reserve troops to Europe amid return from trip where he vowed to defend every inch of NATO territory and said Putin had already lost the war. Good, because we're going back to war, apparently. From Jeff Earl, Deputy U.S. Political Editor for DailyMail.com. President Biden authorized the Pentagon to dispatch an additional 3,000 reserve troops to bolster European security amid his return from a trip to NATO's eastern flank, where he vowed to protect every inch of NATO territory. The White House released the order on Thursday on a day that Biden wrapped up a meeting with Nordic allies in Helsinki, including Finland, the newest member of the 31-country NATO alliance, while Russia's war in Ukraine rages. Look, man, I hereby determine that it's necessary to augment the active armed forces of the U.S. for the effective conduct of Operation Atlantic Resolve, man, in and around the U.S. European Command's area of responsibility. Biden said in a statement released by the White House. The units being deployed cannot exceed 3,000, and not more than 450 can be members of the individual ready reserve, according to the order. The move comes after leaders of the alliance took new steps to bolster Ukraine's arsenal, because of course they did. Ukraine thanks you, by the way, for your taxpayer contribution. The first cluster of munitions authorized by the Pentagon have already begun arriving in Ukraine. Let the war crimes begin. France is now providing long-range missiles, and Biden indicated potential openness to the U.S. providing some as well. I kind of got a kick out of the Babylon Bee coming out here and with their article saying that Zelensky has authorized 3,000 reserve troops for deployment. The U.S. has already taken steps to bolster forces in the event Russia's war expands, sending 1,000 troops to Lithuania, where Biden also visited this week. So, militaristically and strategically, bolstering up some defensive forces along countries that you have a contract with to defend, in the event that Russia passes over the Dnipro and starts steamrolling over into Poland, is probably a good thing. I don't think that he's going to do that, but this is a level of preparedness that I would expect in a situation like this. But, and as I've said from the beginning of the stupidity with the Ukraine, is the fact that I have yet to see any evidence that the plan is to take the entirety of Ukraine. He seems to be focused on the Donbass. He's made a couple runs up to Kiev. But given, again, when we look at the map where Belarus is, if he was really intent on taking Kiev, there's a lot shorter route through the bottom of Belarus to get to the capital and surround it than to take the slog through the mountains of the Donbass region. And we've already had rumors from the beginning of a large separatist movement in that Donbass region before the invasion began. But that's our Europe news. An incident on the mall today from NPC. Driver kills a pedestrian after fleeing Secret Service near National Mall in DC and is still at large. From Tim Stillo, Monica Dunn, and Danielle Jackson. A driver who fled a traffic stop near a National Mall in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday and fatally struck a pedestrian remains at large, officials say. The driver was in an 06 blue Accord when uniformed Secret Service officers tried to stop the car at an intersection of 17th Street Northwest and Constitution Avenue shortly before 1:30 p.m. Secret Service Uniformed Division Lieutenant Paul Mayher said in a statement. The driver, who's not been identified, initially appeared to stop, but then fled southbound, Mayher said. The driver continued through a red light, striking multiple people at a crosswalk. He said one of the pedestrians was hospitalized and died later, Mayher said. The person was identified only as a 75-year-old Philadelphia man. 2 other people had minor injuries, including a 13-year-old girl, according to the Secret Service. Police are working to locate the suspect, and our deepest condolences go to the victim's family, Secret Service spokesperson Anthony Guglielmi said in a statement on Twitter. So, I understand that law enforcement is law enforcement. But I'm having a real problem with the concept that the Secret Service, the President's private protection detail, and I know they do other things too, but I'm having a problem with the fact that they're stopping somebody for an expired registration. Do you not have Metro cops to do that? And I don't know what this guy's problem is. Given the fact that he's killed somebody, he needs to be taken in and questioned severely at this point. He absolutely does. But is this, like, really? Is the president threatened by the fact that somebody has an expired registration? Really? We've got one from the Daily Wire on the COVID. House GOP accidentally releases heap of hidden messages on conspiracy to suppress lab leak theory. From Tim Pierce. Republican lawmakers accidentally disclosed numerous messages revealing more about a conspiracy to cover up the likely origins of the pinko pox because of faulty image cropping. The messages were released in a report on the origins of the pinko pox published this week by the House Select Subcommittee on the pinko pox pandemic. Congressional investigators are probed the creation of a research paper published in March of 2020 in the scientific journal Nature Medicine. I was thinking that this was going to be national, but it was not. It was Nature Medicine that concluded the pinko pox was not a laboratory construct or a purposely manipulated virus. Messages sent by scientists who contributed to the paper revealed that the report's conclusion was a product of politics and deception rather than honest scientific rigor, however. The report was prepared using Acrobat PDF Maker 23 per word and included cropped screenshots of emails and messages exchanged by scientists and researchers who worked on or were consulted about the paper, according to The Intercept. Before publishing the report, committee staff apparently failed to remove the cropped parts of the images from the file, unintentionally making the full images accessible to a couple internet sleuths who later posted the full images. Microsoft warns users of its Acrobat PDF Maker that cropped images are potentially viewable unless extra steps are taken to delete the cropped parts of images. Cropped parts of the pictures are not removed from the file and can potentially be seen by others, Microsoft notes. According to The Intercept, if there is sensitive information in the area you're cropping out, make sure you delete the cropped areas, which for anybody who's used a PDF Maker or a word processor or even an image processor as simple as Microsoft Paint. In most programs, if you crop something, it's gone. You can hit Control-C and get it back for the last time you opened the thing up. But for most of us, once we hit crop, it's gone. The committee has since pulled the original edition of the report and posted a different one. The original report, including the screenshots with the full images accessible, was preserved, however. Thank you, Internet Archive. Archive everything. Some online have speculated about the cropped images and suggested some attempt at softening the blow to scientists. The reports released as intended is a harsh rebuke of the researchers' actions and included damning messages showing the duplicitous work of researchers, including St. Anthony of Fauci, hallowed be his name, the patron saint of medicine. The SSCP has released hundreds of pages of investigatory material, and is committed to a transparent investigation into the origins of the pinko pox. Messages related to the report are consistent with its conclusions and the facts of the investigation, highlighting specific excerpts. To emphasize statements and details is a common investigatory practice. A spokesperson for the subcommittee, led by Ohio Republican Rep. Brad Wenstrup, told the Daily Wire in a statement. The messages revealed in the report show that while the March 2020 research paper concluded that the pinko pox could not have come from a lab, the scientists who worked on the report appeared to intentionally mislead people over the plausibility of the lab leak hypothesis. The researchers wanted to avoid even the appearance that a Chinese lab may be implicated in the release of the pinko pox, partially because of Chinese law. Given the shit show that would happen if anyone serious accused the Chinese of even accidental release, my feeling is we should say that given there's no evidence of specifically engineered virus, we cannot possibly distinguish between a natural evolution and escape, so that we are content with ascribing to a natural process, Dr. Andrew Raumbach wrote in February 2020 in a Slack message. And what's hilarious about this is the fact that it has become common knowledge at this point, commonly accepted knowledge, I should say, that this was a lab leak. Now, intentional lab leak, I don't believe that. Because I think it was an intentional lab leak to the point that people are saying it was an intentional lab leak, it would have been deadlier. Especially to the elderly, the infirmed, and the obese. People who are likely to get state benefits in China that is working on a demographic crisis right now. And I do think that the intent was to have a bioweapon to limit the populations of those three major demographics. But I think that it got released just based on what I've seen around this and the fact that we have accepted the lab leak theory at this point, that it was an accidental leak and it got out before it was ready. And it ripped through the world and it got weaker as it went along, and its host reservoir expanded and expanded. And now you get the sniffles and nobody panics anymore. So that is what's going on with that. Let's talk Target from CNN. Why Republican lawmakers are going after Target, from Nathaniel Meyersohn. Republicans are escalating their legal threats against Target, pressuring the company to remove merchandise for transgender customers, and backtrack on its initiatives to hire minorities and diversify vendors. In singling out Target, GOP lawmakers and right-wing social media personalities are sending a larger warning to corporate America to roll back recent diversity and inclusion policies, analysts say. Target is a high-profile company, one of the biggest, so if you want to make a statement, this would have the impact, said Julian Zelizer, professor of history and public affairs at Princeton University and a CNN political analyst. And Republicans will once again, like they always do, snatch defeat from the jaws of victory on this by getting the law and the lawmakers involved in this. They've been handed a mandate. Their people have shown that on-the-ground boycotts work, and now they're going to use this and overstretch and try to make it legal and violate several portions of the Equal Protection Clause and probably about 4 other constitutional amendments and various laws throughout the national legal framework and the state legal frameworks, depending on where this goes. They'll overstretch, they'll violate the laws, and the general public will turn their back on them yet again, because the GOP always does this. Republicans, on the ground and lawmakers, you have successfully run a major boycott campaign against 2 major companies that the world thought could never be knocked off their throne. I'm sure if you told somebody in 2020 that Anheuser-Busch would drop to the 14th beer manufacturer in the world from its top spot at the time, they'd laugh at you. Don't overstretch this. You've learned to do what works. Now do it. Stop buying from these companies. They hate you. They'll learn. They'll see it in their bottom line. You don't have to make laws about this kind of crap. They'll learn when you go other places. They always do. Texas, in its based moment here from KXAN. $18 billion deal reached. Texans get the biggest property tax cut in state's history. That's good because taxation is theft. From Jala Washington and Christopher Adams. After months of trying to reach a deal, leaders of the Texas Senate and House announced proposed legislation for property tax relief on Monday. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Speaker Dade Phelan released a joint statement detailing the following proposed legislation. Over $12 billion will be spent on reducing the property tax rate for all homeowners and business properties. Every homeowner who homesteads their home, about 5.7 million homeowners, will get a $100,000 homestead exemption. That is massively based right there, especially if that remains on your primary property. Non-homesteaded properties valued at $5 million and under, including residential and commercial properties, will receive a 20% circuit breaker on appraised values as a 3-year pilot project. The legislation will also include savings on the franchise tax for small businesses and create newly elected positions on local appraisal boards. The jobs are going to flock to Texas just on that alone. And then the workers are going to as well by looking at what they can save in taxes. Hell, I'm in a really good spot where I'm at right now in Wisconsin. But given the fact that the homestead, your first $100,000 is apparently tax-free now, I'm debating looking at Texas. I don't know if I could because they don't have enough of a winter for my Wisconsin blood to be able to survive and suffice, but I'm looking at least. Like, I've been kind of tooling around over in the left window here looking at jobs in Texas since I found this out. I haven't really found anything yet, but I've been looking a little bit. This one I threw in just because it's funny. From the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. From one Taylor Lorenz on top of it. Far-right Twitter influencers first on Elon Musk's monetization scheme. Let's read a little bit here. On Thursday, Twitter announced that it would begin sharing ad revenue with content creators on its platform for the first time, but the offer won't apply to all creators. The first beneficiaries appear to be high-profile, far-right influencers who tweeted before the announcement on how much they've earned as part of the program. Ian Miles Chong, Benny Johnson, and Ashley St. Clair all touted their earnings. So far, many of the influencers who have publicly revealed that they're part of the program are prominent figures on the far right. Andrew Tate, for example, who was recently released from jail on rape and human trafficking charges, posted that he'd been paid over $20,000 by Twitter. But not all prominent right-wing Twitter contributors appear to be part of the program. Chaya Raichik of Libs of TikTok offered a tongue-in-cheek response claiming that her relationship with Musk was thriving. So, moving down here just a bit, I wanted to look at this paragraph, which did not make it into the original iteration of this article. And I'll show you why in just a second. Anti-Trump influencers Ed and Brian Krasenstein, who were previously banned from Twitter in 2019 for botting, by the way, also announced that they were part of the program. See, they had to go put this in because they made the announcement themselves, and it was added as a footnote from the edit on the update at the very bottom. After the story was published, the influencers Ed and Brian Krasenstein announced that they were part of the program, and they are absolutely not far right. So, a nice cell phone by one Taylor Lorenz. Alright, this one directly from the FDA. FDA approves its non-prescription daily oral contraceptive. The first one. We've got no author given on this one. Today, the US FDA approved Opill Norgestrel tablet for non-prescription use to prevent pregnancy. The first daily oral contraceptive approved for use in the US without a prescription. Approval of this progestin-only oral contraceptive provides an option for consumers to purchase oral contraceptive medicine without a prescription at drugstores, convenience stores, and grocery stores, as well as online. The timeline for availability and price of this non-prescription product is determined by the manufacturer. Other approved formulations and dosages of other oral contraceptives will remain available by prescription only. So, I have right-wing friends who are completely against the pill. It's understandable with their beliefs. I don't share their beliefs, but with what they believe, and I understand why they come to what they do. And I know other creators, mostly in the right wing, especially female, who have pointed out that when they stopped being on the pill, they've changed how they look at the world completely. They go for different guys, they feel differently, then it is a change of your hormones, definitely. I don't take this pill, so I don't know, but I do understand tangentially that it changes your hormones and a lot of things about your hormones as well, and the things that you do and the way that you live your life, because of the way that your hormones react. I am all for getting the government out of things. The FDA is one of those organizations I think for the most part could go away or be severely limited. That they don't have to come back out and approve everything, but when you are going to take an oral contraceptive that changes your hormones to that level, I barely take aspirin. I can count the number of times on one hand that I have taken an over-the-counter medicine of any kind, cold medicine, aspirin, anything, in the past year. It's been 4, by the way. So I guess just for me, I don't know that it would put anything in my body without saying, hey, doc, can you tell me what this will do, how this affects both women in my age range, and me specifically, since you have my labs and my charts and everything else? And again, I'm not for outlawing any of this stuff. If this is how you want to control and make sure that you don't have abortions or anything else like that, I'm all for that. I am major in favor of contraception. But I still don't think it's a smart idea to just pick something off the shelf and throw it in your body, either. And the last one. I don't do a lot of culture war on this show, but I thought that we'd enjoy this one here. From the Daily Mail. Exclusive: Snow White and the Seven politically correct companions. First pictures of new live-action remake of Disney classic. Show stand-in princess walking with diverse band of merry men and women after Roe overusing dwarf actors. From Emma Powell, Deputy Show Business News Editor, and Ewan Stone for Mail Online. Hi-ho, it's off to the job center they go. For the Seven Dwarves have been replaced by magical creatures for Disney's live-action remake of Snow White. The characters of the fictional princess, who will be played by Rachel Zegler in the film, have been pictured for the first time with her new companion, who will appear to be a mix of genders, ethnicities, and heights. The actress, wearing Snow White's famous yellow and blue dress and red cape, trailed by a group who are dressed in brightly colored clothes for the carrying work tools. They're spotted shooting scenes in Bedfordshire on Thursday in pictures obtained exclusively by Mail Online. The scenes pictured here feature 2 stand-in extras who were used to film additional photography. Disney announced the magical creatures would replace the Seven Dwarfs to avoid reinforcing stereotypes after Game of Thrones actor Peter Dinklage criticized the, and I quote, fucking backwards story last year. I was a little taken aback when Disney was very proud to cast a Latina actress as Snow White. But you're still telling the story of Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, he told Mark Maron's WTF podcast. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, and you're still making that fucking backwards story about the Seven Dwarfs living in a cave together. It's been a while since I've seen Snow White, but I'm pretty sure they had a cottage. Like, I'm 39, and I don't think I've seen this movie since I was 7, which means it's been 32 years. But I'm pretty sure they lived in a cottage. And in fact, she cleaned the cottage for them. That was a big part of the story. While they went to the cave to work. Have I done nothing to advance the cause for my soapbox? Well, maybe you need a second soapbox to get up on there and... Disney bosses also came under fire for giving the titular role to Ziegler, despite the story being about a traditionally fair German princess. Well, I mean, there are white Latinas out there, so I'm less concerned about that, honestly. But, like, there's one dwarf in the Seven Dwarfs. I don't even care about the gender bend. But there's one dwarf among them. And the story is legitimately Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I don't know, I'm not going to see this one either. The last one of these live-action remakes I watched was Beauty and the Beast. Which, aside from, again, will reference my right-wing friends, I actually enjoyed that one. I like Emma Stone. And I really, really dug the darker, more dystopian background of Beauty and the Beast. I thought the whole we have a magical book and transport to Paris thing could have gone out the window. But I like the aesthetic. I like the way that it was done. And I didn't care that Gaston's little friend was gay. We knew that in the 90s when we were kids. I like that movie. I have no desire to see the rest of them. Let's look at our Twitter trending and head out of here for the day. The last thing we do on Friday is we look at our Twitter trending and see what Twitter thinks that we should be talking about versus what we actually talked about. And I think some of, especially because they are high up on politics, no, that's actually not the case. I was going to say, I thought the Twitter trending would be talking about both the Georgia and the Fifth Circuit, which I started a little bit late today because I was looking to see if we needed to put those top of list. No, those will be top of list on Monday because the Trump legal team sent a letter over to Georgia to see about getting the case thrown out, and I've got opinions on that in both directions. And the Fifth Circuit allowed the Biden admin to talk to social media companies again, which I am very, very, very against. But let's look at our Twitter trending and see what is trending today on Twitter. And how much of it I don't know anything about because, well, I stopped paying attention to pop culture when I was about 23. Alright, number one, as always, is SmackDown because SmackDown is happening at the same time Contemporary is. Remember, we can't do any audio from the SmackDown videos because the copyright censors are watching. Shotzi apparently just shaved her hair off. Interesting. And, like, when I was watching WWE when I was a kid, when they did stuff like that, it was real. I know a lot of that stuff is fake, but they typically, when they did especially a major cosmetic change, it was real. So that'll be a part of the story as it goes. Too bad we can't do any audio and figure out why she cut her head off, or cut her hair off rather, but Paul Heyman needs to look like this next week after taking a super kick. Grayson Waller, a name that I've not heard of on this segment before, is the guy to get The Rock back to WWE. This man deserves an award. That'd be interesting to see because The Rock is like twice the size that he was when I stopped watching WWE when I was early 20s. And he was still wrestling at the time. It was probably 04, 05 when I stopped doing WWE. And he was a beefy guy, but he was like a normal sized beefy guy. Now he's like biceps like this. So I want to see both his mobility and his strength now that he's like twice the size that he was at the time. So those are our highlights from SmackDown for the night. Let's look at what else is trending on the main trend. Of course, not for you. Mike Pence is trending right now. Probably with some clips of what we saw earlier from the Tucker Carlson interviews. Give this girl the Cy Young for hitting Mike Pence in the melon with a water balloon. Nice. Take that, War Pig. That's what you advocated for doing to kids in the Middle East for, with actual bombs. Benny Johnson with a clip we watched earlier. Tucker instantly ends Mike Pence's career in 60 seconds. Let's have another glance at this one.
Along the way, the Biden administration has been slow in providing military support. Make no mistake about this. We promised them 33 Abrams tanks in January. I heard again 2 weeks ago in Ukraine, they still don't have them. We've been telling them we'll train their F-16 pilots, but now they're saying maybe January we'll let somebody transfer some jets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President, have you, I know you're running for president. You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. Right. And yet, your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. Right. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern. I'm running for president of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I think Joe...
That's not my concern. You might as well just suspend your campaign at this point. But, I mean, it's Mike Pence, so he didn't have a whisper of a chance to begin with. Ramaswamy is trending. We didn't get any clips from Ramaswamy off of the forum on the first run through. Let's see. Vivek deftly walks through the lead up to January 6th that the MSM likes to memory hole. COVID censorship, vax mandates, lockdowns, Antifa, BLM, fiery but mostly peaceful riots without excusing violence. This is one of the most thoughtful answers on January 6th you'll ever hear. I'm curious. Again, because we didn't get a clip off this when we were looking at the initials. The initial 4 that we did off the forum. All right, Vivek, what do you got?
It's pretty scary. So let's just go through the list. Another thing you can't say is that maybe January 6th, while appalling on one level, maybe it was not an insurrection.
So let me talk about. I haven't talked about this much in the campaign. I'll be very honest with you. You want to know what caused January 6th? There's such a temptation to say that there's one man whose name is unspeakable. We can't.
No, first of all, it's QAnon. It's QAnon.
It's QAnon. You want to know what caused January 6th? Is pervasive censorship in this country in the lead up to January 6th. You tell people in this country they cannot speak, that is when they scream. You tell people they cannot scream, that is when they tear things down. And so the reality is, we were told that you could not question where the virus came from when we all knew it came from a lab in Wuhan, which now they admit. We were told that you could not send a private message to someone on the eve of an election that Hunter Biden's laptop story was actually a true story worth considering before an election. You were systematically suppressed. So think about this. You told you had to be locked down, had to take a vaccine that was mandated and forced down your throat, stay locked down in your home while Antifa and BLM roam and burn the streets of this country. So that's the lead up of one full year of telling people you have to shut up, sit down, and do as you're told. And then you tell them, okay, there's an election where you didn't get the information that you needed, such as the Hunter Biden laptop story being real and suppressed. That's what caused January 6th, is a cycle of censorship in this country. And until we look ourselves in the mirror and admit truth on that, we will not move forward as a country. And I think that's the real cause. And we're not, and I'm sorry to say this, Tucker, but I think until we reckon with that reality, I worry that is the beginning of, it's a friendly parley compared to what's to come, unless we step up and...
I mean, where's the lie? Now, as far as January 6th went, as he pointed out, before the tearing of things down, we had a group of people who were, like he said, censored, who were gathering in D.C. to make sure that their voices got heard. And with a little bit of monkey see, monkey do action out in the crowds and a few people busting through who may have had questionable loyalties, with a, hey, we're through the fence, come on everybody, let's have a party in the Capitol. Things come back and get out of hand from people who are already pissed off and frustrated for what Ramaswamy just said. That was an excellent analysis of that. I know so many people are trying to focus and say Orange Man bad on this one, but that was an excellent outside of Orange Man bad and TDS analysis of what it is. I like Vivek. I don't think that he's got a political pulse, but I do think that he has a place in the public sphere, so we'll be continuing to watch him. What else is trending today? We'll do 2 more, and we'll head out of here for the night. The Last Drive-In. Still have never watched, because that is, I believe, on network TV still. Huh. Guess Shudder is celebrating the 5-year anniversary of the original marathon by recreating the streaming issues of that night. Odd way to celebrate, to be sure, but they're a streamer all about bringing the terror from Last Drive-In. Oh my god, I love you, Kinky Horde, too freaking much. Third week in a row of it not working. Anyone else having issues for The Last Drive-In? I don't know. Again, I've never seen The Last Drive-In, so I can't say what the issues are or try to do it. I'm not really into horror films. And I think it's on network television as well, so no, I guess it is web play. But it's just, this is not something that really interests me. So I can't speak to whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, or... because I've never seen it. And I've never seen half the films that they review on this, so... because of the time slot, just like SmackDown, this pops up just about every time we're on, but... again, not something I know really anything about. Alright, and the last one is Tom Holland, Spider-Man himself. Mr. Zendaya. Tom Holland taking back shots is not something I expected to see today. Can we do this on YouTube? Zendaya when she saw Tom Holland taking back shots. Is there gonna be porn on this? I'm kinda a little bit scared to scroll. Zendaya says, I'm the one who got him a sex scene in our relationship, Tom Holland. So, with YouTube being YouTube and their terms of service over there, we got to be a little bit cautious if something's going off there. Because remember, they can put real-life hardcore porn on Twitter, so we might get that one thing out there that, whoop, oh, your channel's banned. So apparently Tom Holland did something with a chick. I don't know if it's on a movie scene or what it is, but yeah. Yo, we'll go with that. We'll go with that being what happened. And that's going to be it for the night. That was interesting. Interesting way to close things. But that's what we have, and Twitter trending is unpredictable, definitely. Let's head out of here for the night. My troll didn't come back. Guess he took it to heart when I told him no one's holding a gun to his head to be here. Alright. Let's throw some outro music up and let's head out. Alright, so with that, we're done. We're out of here. Thank you, everybody who came by, chatted, and everybody who's going to come back and check out the replay. You can check us on replay on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Odyssey, I believe we're still auto-uploading to, and you can check us out on the audio platform as well over on Spotify. Remember, you're not going to get to see that wild picture of Spider-Man getting humped by whatever alligator is coming up out of the sewer, so you'll miss that, but you'll get to have all the rest of the commentary here on Spotify. It'll be available shortly after the stream ends, so you can go check us out, Contemporary with J. Edgar, over there. We will be back here on Monday to go check out what's happening with the Fifth Circuit, what is happening with Georgia's Supreme Court, and how the Trump team is handling that, and what's ultimately going to come from that. Spoiler alert, I don't think it's going to be anything, and I think that they are going to go through with the trial no matter what, but we will see what happens there. I'll look through the attempted injunction overnight, see what the stay is requested, and what the legalese is behind that. All of that documentation will be available on the Discord as well, so you can go and join up and check that out. Link is in the description or flowing through the chat on the Twitter side if you are over there. Come back and join me on Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.